Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes to the non-gender conforming individuals out there watching, because you a homie too. And we about inclusion on this channel. Getting straight into it. This is why 2025 is the single most pivotal year in our lifetime. I've been feeling this way for a while. Now I have a video to articulate what I actually mean. Let's watch it together because it's going to be interesting. Let's get into it.
We're living in an extraordinary moment in history. We are
We really are
here in 2025 where we have
got
world
AI,
game-changing.
We got quantum
scale. America and the world
That's one thing people don't talk about is the quantum computing.
Itself are going through huge contortions. And there's been 3 previous junctures.
Like, I personally look at the eras of media, how we went from just the invention of the printing press being made, and then we had the radio. I skipped some stuff, but then we got radio. From radio, we had television. Television, we had social media. Now, social media is changing. All those landscapes of what we talked about is changing thanks to AI. And people don't even talk about quantum computing and how that's going to make things even more instantaneous and even more fast. We're speed running convenience.
Americans have found themselves in this exact place. And the key piece of this is tipping points. When do you go from the slow build of a thing that's kind of clunky and not really working, do you all of a sudden get an iPhone that goes, holy shit, this is the most amazing thing in the world, and then everybody needs it. And what I'm trying to tell you now is we are in the middle of 3 tipping points that are world historic.
Artificial intelligence, clean energy, bioengineering. Okay.
I'm Pete Leiden. I've basically been following the story of technology and its evolution and looking ahead into how it's going to change the world over the next 25 years.
Bioengineering, I saw that there's a thing called the Da Vinci. A Da Vinci is like a machine that runs through satellites, and it allows for surgeons to basically, they playing Call of Duty Gears of War, but doing surgery on a machine. Look it up, the Da Vinci. I ain't lying.
Way back in the 90s, in the earliest days of the internet, there was really only one place in the world that was really all over that, and that was Wired magazine.
Okay.
And it was in those early
Taking
days
it back to
that
history.
The founders of Wired picked up on me as someone who had the same kind of
telling you his background,
transformative nature of these technologies.
Telling you his background. So this dude
in the early days of
is
Wired.
official.
Now, people had
he
no
come from
idea what was even going on with the internet.
Y'all don't know. Y'all don't know. You gotta be an old head. Y'all don't know about that AOL screen, that dial up. Like, if you're an old head, status like me, you know about that junk.
Email, what's the web? They had no idea how these goofball startups with names like Amazon.
I'm about to say that's Jeff B.
And the other thing that was going on there beyond this digital revolution was essentially the beginning of globalization. And so myself and my co-author, which was Peter Schwartz, wrote a famous, iconic cover story at Wired that was called
Long Boom.
It was a history of the future.
Okay.
The story from 1980,
the history
which was in our past,
of the
to
future,
2020, which was in our future, trying to explain what was really coming.
That magazine
Now,
probably
those
was
of us who are in
physical
technology,
media,
those
y'all.
of us have been immersed in it, which I have been for most of my
I got
career
examples
now,
all around
can
me.
see clearly these kind of incremental stages of these new technologies that all
Examples all around me about how important physical media is and how that's now about to be art. Like, physical media is about to be artistic value. Like, y'all know how there's a whole art world. The physical media world is about to be something that in the future is very, very valued. At the same time, it's not going to be instantaneous, so it's going to have a trade-off.
successful new technologies go through a technology adoption curve. Let's say like Uber, the idea like, oh my God, instead of a taxi, it's all on your phone. And then all of a sudden, when enough people show how amazing it is, boom, the entire crew moves over. And the old system of the taxi system is gone. So you're watching an old system being essentially dismantled or having to come down at the same time as we're taking off on these new technologies to build the next systems. We're in the middle of that right now. We in the middle of that.
We really are.
We've also seen this in American history before. There's been 3 previous junctures where Americans have found themselves in this exact place. Now, that's not to say it's common. Like, this is 80 years ago, the last time we saw this. And they tend to come in these 80-year cycles. But what's amazing about these things is they have bursts of unbelievably widespread innovation that lasts for 25 years. The last big one was coming off World War II, 1945. 80 years ago, America was on a very similar parallels.
We trying to avoid that war. Please.
We basically were watching the essentially dismantling of the old world that had been working pretty well, the economy and societies of the West. And then there'd been a crash, and you run into the Great Depression of the 1930s. Now, what that was the old system of running the economy just wasn't working. And so what happens is you watch these junctures in American society, we get super polarized. For example, there was an America First movement in the 30s. We were on the verge of violent conflict in America. And then you had the FDR and the kind of New Deal coalition that came out of the Depression, and they started to get traction. But anyhow, we had to resolve this political tension in America. And frankly, it had to do it in the world because the world also was going through this juncture. And so from 1945 to 1970, we watched the great post-war boom. Many people call it the high point of global capitalism. And you built this crazy economy where...
Is he going to touch on the fact that, like, let's do this without the war? Because we know how that war ended. We not trying to take it there. No World War III.
You did many things that were completely different than the previous era. Tax the rich at 90%. You watched incredible investment in public infrastructure like the interstate highway system and building suburbs. You basically watched the GI Bill and education, building institutions for higher education, expanding it for the boomers. That all happened in 25 years. The Great
Those
Society,
people did not have any black people
in the 70s,
in them.
It started kind of getting along in the tooth. Stagflation, oil shocks. But here's the point.
He was letting you know the 70s was
conflict around it,
still
and
racist.
The building of a thing
2025.
That was dramatically different than before. We've been through that before. And funny enough, like I say, if you go another 80 years back,
still racist.
We did it. It's 1865. What is 1865? It's the end of the American Civil War. Now, this is a good example of how passions run very high and political conflict is extreme at these junctures. In the Civil War, it was the most extreme.
Did he go back in time?
To have 700
because he was talking about the 75. Hold on.
And political before. And funny enough, like I say, if you go another 80 years back,
okay, we went back. All right.
Now, this is a good example of how passions run very high and political conflict is extreme at these junctures. In the Civil War, it was the most extreme. I mean, we literally.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, let's avoid the war. Shout out to my favorite brand, who decides war? Because
had to have 750,000
what the fuck?
America, since the founding, had been in tension with these two economic systems.
Why is he
a system of
not anxious,
manufacturing
knowing the history of how things work?
But in the old South, we basically had slavery. And they said, no, we're not going there. We're not going to give it up. We're not going to let go of this old system. We're going to fight to the death on the thing. And so this is a good example. Anyone rooted in the old systems that are going down are passionately want to defend that at all costs. Now, the thing that people do not know about the Civil War, or don't really remember as much about the Civil War, is the Civil War after 1865 had an unbelievable explosion of progress. That lasted for, what do you know, 25 years. For example, the Homestead Act, which is you gave anybody who went out west 150 acres for free. There was also land grant universities.
Were
All these
those
little states
people
started building institutes of higher
black?
education to educate average people,
Were they
but also to be pushing
Caucasian?
scientific understanding of agriculture. But here's the other progress that was going on. It was technology. It was only after the war that America blew out like 175,000 miles of rail and essentially stitched the entire continent together with this.
Okay, so he
steel-based
painted a
rail.
picture of the
And
history.
essentially, we reinvented America in 25 years. And
What's
here's the even
next?
crazier thing, though. You go back another 80 years.
Oh,
we did it.
he's showing you again that it happens every 80 years. Okay. Okay, so he's building
1787 to about 1810,
building the case here.
1815,
All right.
we had created what is America. One way to understand what was happening in America at that time was it was part of a bigger part of Western Europe, in particular an extension of Britain, which was going through the Enlightenment at the time. The Enlightenment is essentially a fundamental system change from a feudal society kind of dominated by the Catholic Church and all that kind of stuff into essentially what we would now consider the modern world.
This makes me question, because he is showing the history. Is this one different? Because he says it happens every 80 years. Is this the one that's finally diverse? That's not meant just for those who are favored by the patriarchy, aka white society, white European standards, all that stuff? Trying to say it as politically as possible, but y'all know what I'm saying.
And they invented 6 huge things that we still are working within today. Now, the reason I'm kind of saying that is we still are working within.
What were those things? We got mechanical engines, carbine engines, the Industrial Revolution, financial capitalism, representative democracy, nation states. We still have all of that.
Day.
No cap.
Now, the reason I'm kind of saying that is that had world historic implications. That was a building of a civilization that we essentially invented, we humans, but we Western Europe, in basically a space of 120 years. The forward motion of innovation, essentially from the West, was coming.
Should I get a green screen? Like, this video is sponsored by that question. Should I get a green screen? I'm not gonna have a lot of clearance to put this on up. I don't think I'm gonna have any. So probably no green screen yet. Not till I move. We moving soon though. Believe it.
With those crazy ass Americans who had this wide open continent to spread it to. And that is what America's role has been vis-a-vis the West in every one of those epochs. I'm arguing we have one more crank at that wheel with the arrival of 3 world historic
One more?
around its day.
He thinks just
And the
one
most
more.
obvious one is the arrival of artificial intelligence.
AI, y'all.
Chat GPT. Maybe you've heard of it. If you haven't, then get ready, because this promises to be the viral sensation that could completely reset how we do things.
The arrival of generative AI, with the arrival of ChatGPT 3.5 in November of 2022, I think we're going to see that as a world historic moment. I think people will look back on that is the starting gun of what will be understood as the age of AI.
Yep.
And I use age in a very explicit way, which is when you talk about a different age that humans enter, like, oh, the humans, entered the Bronze Age or the Iron Age. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about essentially a fundamental
Printing,
game-changing
electricity,
technology,
automobiles,
a breakthrough,
airplanes.
a step change in our abilities, that once you cross that threshold, you don't go back. We're going to watch an explosion of amplification. The amplification
He really just put it
of our
on
mental
the
powers
levels.
with digital computers and now AI.
'Cause this shit
are gonna be very
is
similar
up there
to
with
the amplification
aerospace,
of our physical powers
rocket
that
science.
mechanical engines, initially by steam, created the prosperity and wealth of the
This
world
shit
that we know
is
now.
rocket
But
science,
we're just
literally.
holy shit, we had no idea this is the world we're in. This is the first time
That's very
we have
big.
an energy source that is a technology. 100%
An
a
energy source
technology,
that's a
not a
technology.
commodity. We don't have to dig it up
Oh,
as
wow.
coal. We don't have to tap into it as oil. Why is that?
I like how they put that.
Because once it's a technology, you can consistently drive down the cost. And there's a kind of a rule of thumb in manufacturing, which if you double the number of producing solar panels, you will come up with about 20% of a drop in cost. And this is the point. It's going to keep getting cheaper. And the same thing, flipping around to the same thing with electric cars. People think, well, electric cars are still expensive and whatever. You're not thinking this through, because battery technology is the same thing. That's in lithium batteries. We're now getting whole other generations of batteries, like solid state batteries, that essentially will be a next generation. But the point is, the forward motion of costs coming down on clean energies is just beginning. And when that happens, you're going to have what? Abundant, clean energy.
Okay. That's big.
Basically, right around the time that
That's
we
very
essentially
big.
had our earliest breakthroughs on generative AI, which is about 15 years ago,
I
we
can't
also
even
had
cap.
the big breakthrough in
I ADHD. I got ADHD, so like I zoned out. I don't even know what he just said. I'm not gonna run it back. I hope y'all caught it.
what they call CRISPR, which is we figured out a way to cheaply and easily edit the genome of any living thing. And
Okay.
just take
Wow.
one example. We now know how to take a cell, put it in a vat, and you can give it the same amino acids and the same kind of nutrients and the same
Oh,
things
wow.
that a cow roaming around a field for like years chewing on grass would get those same nutrients, those same amino acids, and essentially would produce in their muscles the meat. That same thing can happen in a vat to actually grow the same cow cell into actual meat. Not like kind of meat, not like plant-based meat that's kind of like meat. It's meat. It's the same cell. It tastes exactly the same. And what's happened, we've only 25 years ago, it's like 2003 was the first time humans
Manufacturing.
had ever cracked or understood the human genome. It took $3 billion and it took 15 years to do it.
Wow.
The cost of doing that from $3 billion had been driven down so far, it was $1,000. It's now at the point where it's about $100. And eventually
wow.
it's going to keep driving down to $50 or nothing. It's not just the same level, it is twice as fast. We can now essentially design these things for outcomes that we want to happen cheaply. And
Oh,
easily.
wow. I had no idea about that.
So the technology story of today, AI, clean energies, even bioengineering, is kind of familiar at some level. The next several iterations here, though, I think is putting a bigger lens on what's going on today. And it gets us back to what we were describing as what's happening in America is a once in a year reinvention.
Okay.
And in fact, it's even possible that what's going on here is essentially the early days of building a 21st century civilization. And so when you think about that, you go beyond the technology. That's like the foundation. And so the next thing up, I think, from technologies, you start thinking, okay, well, what could you build with those technologies? What kind of an economy would you want to build? The economic system that the United States has been based on, that has worked for essentially the top 10% for sure, and certainly for the top 1%, has not been working for 80%. And it's gotten to the point where they just have had it. So as crazy as it sounds, we could be at a point in the world right now in 2025 where we are watching the beginnings of a shift from financial capitalism,
Okay.
born and raised out of the Enlightenment, to essentially some version of a sustainable capitalism. We're going from a world of representative democracy, which was a brilliant move.
That's what I'm saying. If capitalism is flawed, what's next? What does the system that is if it's scaled, if capitalism was a beta test, if that was the beta, not the actual final product that's getting pushed, what's next? I don't know what that looks like. I don't think a lot of people knows what that looks like. I think that's going to take collective bargaining. That's a buzzword. But I think it's going to take collective conversations, collective work. Like, it's going to take a group of people coming together and actually having conversations. That sounds so cliche. Everybody say that. But it's really part of the conversations that need to be had.
Forward to essentially a digital democracy. And we're also going to go from a world of nation states, which again was a great breakthrough from empires and colonies of the past, to some kind of global governance that coordinates the 10 billion people on this planet. That's the level of change I think we're actually heading into. That's the level of change I think your kids are going to be wrestling with, and that's the level of change I think America is going through now. And the quicker we start to wrap our heads around that challenge and the kind of scale of the dimension we're up to, the better off we're all going to be.
He right though. Like, unfortunately,